Welcome along, one and all, to round 5 of the F2 Cup in APPF1. This is, of course, the 8th season of the F2 Cup. We are just hitting the halfway stage as of tonight. Unfortunately, yes, I have been away for a couple of rounds, but of course, raring to go to get back into the action here at the Hungaroring for tonight. So can't wait to get into it in these F2 cars and with this fantastic F2 grid, and I have to say that the turnout for tonight and the names on this grid are absolutely spectacular. So I can't wait to see how they are all going to go down out on the track as we begin to count down towards the session, towards the Hungaroring. Of course, this track always one of the most high pressure qualifying sessions you're going to see anywhere, and well, especially here with the one shot session in front of us is going to make things very, very difficult for the drivers. They're going to have to execute to the best of their abilities. That is all going to be absolutely spectacular to watch. We are now just about getting into it. So here we go for the qualifying session, and we'll right on board with whoever Rick will go with, the multiple champion, the 4-time champion here in the F2 Cup, going on towards that first corner here at the Hungaroring, opening up that DRS, getting on to that throttle pedal. You saw him snapping the rear end a little bit as he heads down into turn number 2. You can see going all the way around, and again the rear stepping out on that frame of car. Not a good first sector for the former 4-time champion, as the Fortuna leads them to the first sector alongside his teammate, the rapid Jordan DHL, who makes his first appearance since the opening round of the season. Rick now heading out of turn number 5, keeps it nicely within the track limits, on to the brakes, see locking it up into turn 6, very, very easy to do that. He punches out the exit nicely, now into this tricky S section, a lot of curb there at turn 8, might have compromised the run just a little bit. Onto the throttle pedal once again, heading to turns now 10 and 11. You'll see him just left off little dab of brakes to rotate the car. Rick making ground in that second sector, but it is still Fortuna who leads the way. The championship leader, the man who doubled up last time out in Mexico, looking good for another one then. But there are several drivers hot on his heels as they head down towards the final couple of corners. Turn 13, tough traction zone. Rick, you can see in second gear then. Final corner, turn 14. Turning it in and then getting onto that throttle pedal, and we'll see which way the pole position's going to go. It looks like it's headed Jordan way, and it is 1:24.9, and just look at those gaps up at the top of the timing sheets. Absolutely phenomenal stuff in the end, but it is the high techs, as you'd kind of expect, really, the kind of speed that they have shown. It is them on top. But just look at that. Jordan DHL, 700ths of a second just from Fortuna, and then QVR Verstappen just another 100th further behind. Who am I? Continuing his great form in qualifying of late, goes 4th, ahead of Koru 5th, and then Rick 6th. Ghost coming next. We'll probably be disappointed with that. Then James next in P8. In that ART car, just ahead of Jackalacco and Reshka to round at the top 10. Coat Master, who's made his debut for tonight, comes next. Then Runes, Lawrence, Robsu, and then JB, Hugo, and Bacon Bear all invalidating, which is of course critical at this Hungaroring circuit. And of course, get with this format with the top 10 flipped for the sprint race. And then obviously the grid itself used in the feature race. That does mean, of course, that if you qualify outside the top 10, if you qualify at the back, you're going to get punished in both of the race starts all the way through. So you're going to have to recover, well, try and recover at the very least at this track, which is very difficult to overtake. Reshka, who put it 10th on the grid, will start this sprint race coming up from pole position. So we shall see if he's able to hold onto that. Jackalacco will be alongside him up at the front. That's going to be a feisty battle up at the front. Two guys coming off of great performances in the Tier 1 race just a couple of days ago. Hello to everyone in the chat, of course. Hopefully you're all very excited for, of course, two great races that we're going to put on here tonight. And we're just going to get geared up towards the first of those here in this sprint race. F2, always a great spectacle, and even though this track is tough to overtake, you do tend to get some great races around here. So let's hope for more of the same. The first race of the night about to come. while we have a bit of time, we'll just run through the grid order for this first race. It is Reska on pole with Jackalacko alongside him on the front row. James comes next, then Ghost on the second row. Third row is made up of Koru and Rick, and then Koru, I should say. Who Am I comes next, then Verstappen, then Fortuna, and then Jordan VHL, who was, of course, the fastest in that one-shot qualifying session, and will try and work his way through. Early on we saw, of course, well, the great starts that Fortuna has made from the middle of the grid in some of the sprint races so far. So watch for him trying to move up in those early laps. QVR Verstappen, of course, his nearest championship rival, just behind him just in front of him on the grid. So we're going to see them go at it, but of course they are going to go from the front as well as we get ready for the sprint race. And it's underway here at the Hungary with Reshko leading away off the lane from Jackalacko as they sprint down towards the first turn of the race. Good start from behind from Ghost, going towards the inside of that first corner, and they barrel it four wide as James tries to wedge away in there and tags Reshka. Reshka going backwards then after a four wide encounter at the first corner, and Ghost who leads it from Jackalacko towards turn two. They had tried it just tucking in to that second place, unable to quite find the way through on the brakes. The rear end of that car snapping too as Koru chases him down, but it was Reshka who came off worse in that four wide encounter further back as they scrap their way up towards turn number 4. We've got a bit of an odd action here as Reshka and Fortuna now side by side coming through turn number 5 on the exit then as the High-Tech tries to make ground, and the pole sitter is squeezed out onto that outside curb and is going to be run out of road, has to bail out and re-emerge as that Fortuna zone, as that High-Tech got front wing damage as there's cars round to the back. Hugo has gone off as well as Robsu. They recover but a long way down in the early stages of this sprint race then, and plenty to do at this stage, unfortunately for these two. And Detached not having a good night so far. It is though Ghost who leads from Jackalacko. Koru pressuring there in that AX car, getting very tight to the rear end of the Trident, and Jordan already up at 5 places is certainly going to be a threat further down the road. They head out now to the end of the first lap with Ghost leading and leading comfortably, and Koru chasing down Jackalacko and Jordan chasing down James further behind. Towards turn 1 they go. Koru looking to the inside, he's going to commit to it on the brakes, going side by side through the apex. Now on the exit, which way is this one going to go? Jackalacko's found some good traction out there, gets just half a nose ahead as they go down towards turn 3, has that inside line. Koru is going to try and fight it the long way around. He's going to get the squeezing treatment though, surely. And Jackalacko sees him off, and now James is trying to pick his way through, of course. Looking to the outside of turn 4. Tough to make a move there though, and he does indeed get out of the throttle and just cede that third position just for the time being. Has Jordan all into the back of him! Oh my goodness me! The High-Tech running into the rear end of the man in front of him, James, in that ART car, and he drops all the way down the order then. Of course, I was on board with the Irishman, so didn't get to see how he was tagged, but that's certainly what is happening. And James, after qualifying up in that third position, or getting himself third on the grid for this race, is way down the field and severely compromised for his future in this race. So gutting news for him. Jordan, of course, having his own struggles in that. He does also have damage on that High-Tech, so both of them with damage as Runes looking to the outside of Who Am I and getting a big squeeze onto the curb for his troubles there. He's made a good start to this race, tucks in behind, was unable to find his way through on the outside championship contender at the moment, currently third in that classification, and you can see James coming into the pit lane after that incident. Now Fortuna still on the move on Rick and breezes his way through. Front wing damage not handicapping him much. He goes through. He does run very deep on the brakes as Koru up in front attacking Jackalacko once again. This time he's got a nose ahead going into turn 2. Jacko trying to stay in it on the brakes, but he doesn't have much space to work with there. He's going to try and get a drive towards turn 4, but it looks like Koru has just about done enough. Jackalacko is coming at him, but there's no way through, going into that very, very fast and narrow point of the track as Runes picks his way past Rick. What a start to the race he's having at the moment. Runes on the charge. The man from down under is Who Am I tags the back of Rick. Now looking to the inside, and Rick's speed severely compromised here. He's also got damage. Another car coming to blows early on in this race. He tries to stay in it as they head towards turning. He's pinched on the inside. There's contact, and around go the pair of them, and the ARX car into the wall after contact with the 4-time champion, and the man who's had such a great run to start the season also knocked right down the field. So many big names having big problems early on in the sprint race, and including one, of course, third in the championship, really in a better situation at this point. Fortuna has had the best run out of the championship contenders. Verstappen, I haven't noticed he's got any damage, and he hasn't, but he hasn't quite made the progress in the early stages of this race. He chases down Reshka. They run P7 and P8, but Codemaster is also in on the scene here, and two Dutchmen going nose to tail down towards turn number 1. He looks to the inside and brakes extraordinarily late. Can he get that one stopped? He actually can indeed. He's going to be at the mercy of the switchback, but QVR Verstappen also losing the rear on the exit and is not going to be able to reclaim that place. So not having a fun start to life here in that sprint race after just narrowly missing out on pole, and that is going to be tough work to do, with Fortuna disappearing up the road in spite of that damage. They're all getting stacked up behind the also damaged high-tech of Jordan DHL, trying desperately to fend off in that 6th position as Reshka for company, and this ever-increasing train further up behind him as the top 5 scamper up and off the road. So Codemaster looking to the inside, but no way through on the brakes from distance, but he's having a very good start to life in this division so far. Yes, indeed, there's been plenty of contact early on in this race. These guys have really been going at it, of course, at this circuit where it is so difficult to overtake. These guys have to take chances, and Reshka going off the circuit to draw alongside Jordan DHL, who brakes very late at turn 12 to keep a hold of that position. But Reshka getting a little bit creative in his efforts to try and take a hold of that 6th place. Still charging and still being repelled at the moment, and leaves the door open at turn 14, and Codemaster goes into it, hits the inside wall though, and loses momentum. QVR Verstappen is going to try and repay the favour. The Invicta car moving over towards the inside line, and they're going to go side by side as they go towards the brake pedal. Reshka also looking at Jordan. Codemaster continues to move across and gets contact, and QVR Verstappen, he does lose the rear, but he looks like he's just about going to go through, squeezing across. Look at Hugo though. Hugo attacking hard on the outside then on that big recovery drive. He is side by side now with QVR Verstappen. He is all the way around the outside, and he is through to P8. What a comeback drive this is proving to be, as Reshka, is he finally going to get through the defence of Jordan DHL? Yes, he is. Reshka on his way back in this race, and he moves up to 6th position on the road. But Hugo, I mean, we know how quick he is in these cars, and he's chasing down a man who he often finds himself fighting for leaderboard positions with in this car. And he is chasing down hard as Rick is going out of the race. That's in the pit lane. So unfortunate for Rick, but it won't have much impact on the race other than that. Hugo threatening, of course, the high-tech, who suffering with that front wing damage. I haven't given much coverage to the leading pato, quite frankly. There hasn't been much to speak about, but Koru's still seeing off Jackalacco as Hugo to the inside of Jordan finds his way through on the apex and is gonna get it done. Jordan may try and fight it, but doesn't have the downforce to sustain that battle, as Verstappen flashing to the outside there at turn 13. He may, of course, try and take advantage of the downforce that he has against that high-tech and look for the better drive out. He's had a frustrating race up to this point, but he's trying to salvage whatever he can out of it. He and Codemaster chasing after Jordan as they head down towards the first corner. Jordan fades to the inside. Verstappen plunges to the outside late on the brakes, and he's going to sweep all the way through. Does he get traction on the outside this time? Yes, he does. And Verstappen looks to seal that 8th position, and Jordan's going to have to look behind him once again. Front wing damage is ailing him at this mid-phase of the race, and the Invicta car is up and alongside, and it may go through. They go side by side through turn 3. Both of them go off the road, and Jordan is overtaken by Joe B. James is going off also in the pit lane, bringing his race to a close. My goodness me, the front wing damage, just as it did in Catalonia, is throwing us an all new element into this race, and creating splits, creating trains, creating all sorts in this sprint race up to this point, as penalties beginning to be picked up, and Jackalacco, who runs in that 3rd place, going into a picking up a difficult one at this moment. He's got Fortuna right with him, doing a magnificent job, it must be said, to manage that wing damage. Still chasing on to that 3rd position, but it is Ghost still leading and leading comfortably at the moment. After taking the lead at the start, he has been very much not threatened, it has to be said. Fortuna does seem to have plenty of speed, but seemingly a little bit too far back to threaten. He feints to the inside, and Jackalacco does run just a little deep going through the apex. but he isn't going to quite be able to pick it up as Hugo moves past Reshka up into 6th place. What a recovery this is from the Super Swede. Moving up into 6th place, he does now have a penalty for his troubles, but he's going to try and do whatever he can to make up for it as Verstappen looking to the outside of Reshka. Can't quite find it at this stage. Still chasing hard. There's your penalties at the moment. So Hugo with 3 seconds, but he seems to have plenty of pace at his disposal. If he can try and drop Reshka out of that DRS range, that's going to make things very, very good for his case. Now, can QVR Verstappen find a way through on the back of Reshka? Ruins Hugo's teammate, picking up a penalty of his own, although he does have a huge advantage over this train. So not massively costly, it seems, at this stage. He holds 5th place. You'd suspect that Hugo may be able to reel him in, but it's going to be difficult for the rest of these guys who don't seem to quite have the pace. Reshka doing enough to stay in DRS range, though, at the moment. Critical, of course, for his chances of holding on to that 7th place, as JB a little off the road further behind. Still sticking himself in contention, though, as they head towards half distance. Then Ghost still leading the way and really looks pretty untroubled. Up in front, Fortuna, can he carve a move on Jackalacco as they head towards the first corner? He is within striking distance if he wants to go for it. He thinks about it, doesn't commit to it, tries to find traction on the exit. How successful is he going to be? Well, the rear end lighting up there as he tries to get early on the throttle. Jackalacco will repel him for the time being, but that penalty still looming large over his head. The battle behind, and it does look like Reshka is able to stay with Hugo at this stage, and that's enough at the moment to keep QVR Verstappen at bay. But you can see the lack of rear grip some of these guys are dealing with, and the rear ends of some of these cars moving around as they head up towards turn 4, and still this P6 train endures. That's really the two big focal points of this race: a train for P2 and a train for P6 on the road. Copemaster looking very threatening, though, in that 9th place. He and QVR Verstappen, of course, went back and forth in those first couple of laps, trying to pressurise, but of course this track's so difficult to stay with, and if you do have the DRS you can hang on, but DRS is what Reshka desperately needs at this stage, and he's teetering on the edge of that 1 second range of the rapid Campos car in front of him, who's trying to stretch clear. The DRS detection point comes into the entry of the final corner at turn 14, and Reshka trying to get it. With that, he may be able to keep Verstappen behind him, but if he can't, it's going to make things mightily difficult for him. He's just about held on to it, though, by I think a margin of about 1.5 hundredths of a second. He's kept it, and that will just frustrate QVR Verstappen for that little bit longer. Up ahead, still Jackalacco resisting Fortuna. Of course, Fortuna, even with Jackalacco's penalty, he wants to go after Koru. And at the moment, if Koru has Jackalacco as a buffer, he can fend off. So Fortuna unable to move through for the moment, and balked in that DRS train. He's close to him, going towards turn number 4 as Reshka and QVR Verstappen now side by side, and he tries to go all the way around the outside of the ART. They're side by side through the apex of turn 3 and up towards turn 4. Still nothing to separate them as they barrel into the second sector. Verstappen tries to hang out, can't manage it. Copemaster right with him now, looking to the outside. Can he get a better exit off this turn at 5? He does get a good run. Is he near enough to dive on the brakes? No, it's of course a very short braking zone, and he can't quite see it through. My goodness, though, what a scrap. But Reshka, well, he just held on to DRS on the last lap, and he just managed to hold on to the place. This next lap, the first of those two things, will not hold up. So now that may give QVR Verstappen just the opportunity he needs to try and get that move done. Laps ticking down in this race, and still this battle for P7 now rages on between these three cars. Codemaster does look highly competitive, it must be said, as he barrels towards these two highly experienced drivers, trying to search through. Verstappen does leave a bit of the door open, but in the end, Copemaster not able to quite force away alongside Fortuna now again for that 3rd place, and he goes straight through on this occasion. Jackalacco cannot hold him back, and now he's got a clear run at Koru. Here comes QVR Verstappen to the inside, gets the upper ground on Reshka. Reshka trying to switch him back, but he's got to worry without the DRS of the second Dutchman chasing him down. He moves towards the inside, back to the middle of the road, back to the outside. He manages to see him off for the time being, but now can he try and stay in that DRS range of QVR Verstappen, possibly even threaten him in these closing laps? Of course, he started this race for pole position, was desperately unlucky at the start. And now trying to salvage whatever he can out of this race as Codemaster picks up a time penalty. I would say relieve the pressure on Reshka, but he had the Invicta car right up towards his rear wing there, and in the end, it is the man behind who does lose the rear end, gather it back up and go on the offensive. But a tough blow to his pursuit, and he'll have to work hard for DRS for himself. Really, Ghost has been entirely untroubled up at the front of this race. Of course, he does have a race win on the season. That brilliant, magnificent drive he had in the feature race at Monza. And at the moment, after leading off the start, he has looked entirely untroubled, holding that gap as Koru tries to hold off the championship leader now for that second place, who is in the slipstream and looking towards that second place. And Koru not fighting that inside line. He's just going to cede it. Fortuna, he does run deep on his brakes, but he does have DRS to cover him off. Koru just barely alongside, but does not have the momentum, surely, to get that one done. And Fortuna managing wing damage superbly. He is P2 on the road, and he could continue to take another scalp in that championship fight. He came into this race 17 points ahead of QVR Verstappen, and he's set to extend that lead. At the moment, with Verstappen still balked, he's trying to chase onto Hugo, or at the very least stay within that penalty range for a P6. He may have intentions of trying to chase down Runes, but that will be a tough ask. Runes certainly not slow, as Jordan picks up a second time penalty of the race, and a nightmare for arguably the quickest driver in this entire division. He will of course have better fortunes come the feature race starting from pole, but this sprint race has certainly been one to forget for him up towards this stage. Ghost still leads away, and quite frankly looks completely untroubled. He just has to keep it within the white lines, and surely this race is his Fortuna. I think if he did have a fully functioning high-tech underneath him, he would certainly pose a threat, but at this stage, 2.7 seconds seems like a bridge too far to try and chase down. Of course, tyre wear does start to come into it at this stage, but surely it's too little too late. It's still, of course, a magnificent drive, but it may not be yet another, or I should say a third consecutive win after the double last time out in Mexico. But he does have P2 and have P2 comfortably. It doesn't seem as though there's much attacking possibility for Koru behind him, as further back, Verstappen, his pace is actually virtually matching Hugo's, so good job once he's gotten in the clean air, and he may be able to just haul himself up towards Runes and snatch up that 5th place, and that may just about do it for him. Which would be a very solid recovery drive. I do wonder if Hugo's going to try and play rear gunner for his teammate, or if he's going to try and chase him down with both of them on equal terms with the 3-second time penalties. So at the moment, the penalties costing these two Campos cars at the moment, certainly Hugo, who hasn't been able to quite shake off Reshka either out of that 3-second range. Codemaster with a penalty of himself, and I think anyway is just outside of that 3-second range. So at the moment, Hugo at least on for 8th position, but he is chasing down his teammate, and I do wonder what the dynamic is going to be when we hit that. Just over 2 laps to go here in a sprint race, and it does seem like after all the early action, we do have a much more fractured race without much possibility for many of these guys to move up. Ghost leads Fortuna, leads Koru. Koru has stuck close to the high-tech. He didn't defend that position very hard, which is very unlike Koru, but he is going to try and fight it on, I'm sure. See if he can set himself up going into the final lap to try and chase him down. Reshka Detto still sticking with QVR Verstappen, still offering up a threat. Can he try and pull some last lap heroics, just like he did against yours truly in the Tier 1 race on Friday? He tries to chase down the ART, currently sat second in the championship. Looking to try and hang on, and ruins the second penalty, and that may put paid to any ambitions he had of hanging on to that, well, to at least a 6th or 7th place. Maybe Codemaster is the man he is racing at this stage. He still has a little bit of time in hand, I do believe, but they are all reeling him in these closing laps, so we'll see if he's able to hang on to it. Koru is able to stick with Fortuna. Fortuna has taken just a few tenths of a second out of Ghost, but really hasn't quite looked like threatening him. So yeah, as I said a few laps ago for Ghost, the objective just to keep the car between the white lines, and he will have seemingly a second race win of the season as he hits the final lap with clear daylight between himself and the championship leader, and just room to bring it home. Ghost just has one to go here at the Hungaroring. Hugo still pushing for all of his might, just clawing himself up towards his teammate. Of course, his race is really with the two drivers behind him, but at the moment he just hasn't quite been able to create the separation he wanted to in these last couple of laps. Reshka trying his level best to chase down QVR Verstappen. He's certainly kept himself as a credible threat in that 7th and 8th scrap, but he can't quite find a way through towards turn 2, and of course with limited overtaking opportunities throughout the rest of the lap, Verstappen looks as though he's set to hang on to that position, and if he can keep it clean on track limits, he will overhaul the two Campos cars in front of him. Jackalacco also with a 3-second penalty just in front. Oh, there it is. You saw that snap just towards the outside, and the man second in the championship. That could be a critical error. Runes immediately pulls over to allow his teammate through and play rear gunner. Oh my goodness me. We saw, of course, Jordan DHL making that mistake at Catalonia, and QVR Verstappen was the beneficiary of that to take the win on that occasion. It won't cost him massive holes of points, but that's certainly going to be a better blow in a frustrating race for the Dutchman. Here is Ghost, though. We've barely ever seen him, and to be quite honest, barely have his rivals either. He is going to come through towards the final corner. He got it done at the start, and he is going to come through for a second victory of the season. He fends off Fortuna for that win. Fortuna, though, a great drive, it must be said, for second place ahead of Koru. Jackalacco comes next, despite the penalty, more than a big enough buffer to the cars in front of him. A big scrap to the line, and Reshka, by virtue of avoiding those penalties, does end up with the 5th place, although only just ahead of Hugo. Verstappen comes next. P5 was there for the taking, you have to be said. Copemaster, great debut. Then comes Runes, frustrated with the penalties too. Then comes JB at the edge of the top 10. Who am I? After also a race to forget, spears into the wall over the line. Then Robsu, Lawrence, Jordan DHL and Bacon Bear will see out the results. Of course, in this sprint race, it is points for the top 12 in descending order from 12 for the winner downwards. So a healthy haul of points for Ghost, but of course the big points are to be dished out in just a few minutes' time when we get the feature race underway. So that will do the first race of the night, and we will see soon for the second race. We'll tidy up the results in a moment, but Ghost, domineering win, really was never threatened. So we'll get our look at the results one more time. It is Ghost winning it from Fortuna, who does get the fast lap of the race. Really, it's scary to think what the championship leader could have accomplished if he had no damage on his car. Koru, great podium from 6th on the grid. Then comes Jackalacco. Would have been frustrated, I think, to lose out in that battle, although I think he'd be glad in the end that the penalty didn't really cost him. Reshka, you have to say, after the start, great job at fighting back, managing to avoid the penalties and take home a very credible 5th on that occasion, and a great haul of points for Van Amersfoort in their constructors push. Hugo next, also a great recovery drive. Remember what happened to him on the first lap. Of course, he would have also been bemoaning the penalty, but the incredible pace that he showed at that stage in the race. QVR Verstappen next, then Copemaster, then Runes, then JB rounds out the top 10 points paying positions, rounded out by Who Am I and Robsu. Then it is Lawrence, then it is Jordan DHL in a frustrating race, then Bacon Bear with James and Rick unable to see the checkered flag. Bitterly unlucky, of course, for those guys. So we're going to get pretty much straight into the next event of the evening. Hopefully you're all enjoying this one, and of course we look very much forward to the feature race. Tends to, of course, produce a banger, as this F2 Cup is prone to do. So we've got bright sunny skies for the feature race. Now strategy is going to come into it most of all, so we'll see how it unfolds. You're seeing those soft tires being selected. So we've had the warm-up. Now we get into the main event of the evening. Don't go anywhere. We will see the feature race here at the Hungaroring in just a minute's time. And I will say that there is quite a bit of bitterness, better words being exchanged in the chat between some of the drivers. Yeah, I do hope this race has a bit of a cleaner start. It was a bit of a shame to see so many drivers getting caught up in incidents and getting damage uh, early on uh, in that sprint race. So hopefully that is going to change for this race. And of course, we've seen tyre choices be such a big part of the feature race in the opening couple of rounds of the season. We saw, of course, those dynamics between the guys on the front row exchanging the tyre choices, whether you want to start on the softer compound or the harder compound. As we saw those exchanges in full effect at the very least the 2 rounds that I was here for in Catalonia and in Monza. Of course, in Catalonia, we saw QVR Verstappen scampering off in the first couple of laps on the softer compound in the first stint, and then getting reeled in by Jordan DHL later on in the race. In Monza, we saw something a bit different. Ghost went off strategy and started on the softer compound. Seemed to be in trouble in the early laps, but clearly that softer compound, or the super soft tire, I believe it was on that occasion, just did not have the speed. So it looked as though he just didn't quite have the pace to hang on, but actually going for that undercut and then barely getting reeled in at the end of the race when he was on the harder compound, and he of course took home a very well earned race win on that occasion. We'll see, of course, what the tire dynamics are in this feature race. Doubtless it's going to be a little bit different. Of course, the last feature race here at the Hungaroring in F2 was won by yours truly. So some people know what it takes to win around this track. We'll see who has what it takes here tonight. I know we were trying to make an effort to get LB into the session, which is why we're having this little bit of a delay, but it doesn't look as though he's able to get himself into a car. He is just saying he lagged out, so I'm not sure if he was able to select a car. Of course, he did join a little bit later on. I can't remember if it was in qualifying or in the opening couple of laps of the sprint race. But it does seem as though he's not quite able to go forward, not as we are already setting up for this feature race. So we will get things underway for the second race of the evening. We have 5 lights. And the feature race here at Hungary is going. The high-tech duo race towards the first corner of the second race of the evening. Let's see who's going to come out on top. To the inside, Fortuna draws alongside his teammate as they barrel towards the braking zone, and the Swede is going to get the upper hand. Well, I say they're both Swedish, but it is Fortuna who leads Jordan DHL, and then side by side Verstappen and Who Am I going towards that second corner. Who Am I trying to hold out wide in that AIX car? He does have the softer tyres underneath him, trying to pinch his way towards that apex. There was contact between them, and they're going to go sideways. Oh my goodness me! As almost around, Jordan DHL catches the slide, but slips right down the order then. He's going to get passed up by Ghost 2 and down into 6th position then. So another torrid start for the pole setter, and he's got much work to do in the laps to come. Look at the split in tyre choices though. Fortuna, he did have the grip off the lane with those softs, and Jordan, well, you can see how much grip those mediums are giving him. He drops down in the 6th place, and that could have been a very costly slide early on, but it is Fortuna who leads. And I tell you what, he leads well. He did exactly what he needed to do with the softer tyres off the line, and he sprinted clear and is out of that 1 second range, just as we saw Verstappen do in the first round of the season at Catalonia. So he leads the way from Verstappen. Rick comes next. Good start from him, moving up 3 spots. He kind of took advantage, it seems, of that Jordan DHL slide, as Who Am I was a little bit balked by that. Drops down into 4th position, tries to chase after the framer in front of him now, picking up that slipstream, moving towards turn number 1. Is he going to send a move from distance? He is indeed. He goes late on the brakes, but he gets it stopped nicely, gets it to the apex. But Rick carrying the speed around the outside, and they are still level as they head towards turn 2. Who Am I? Can he hold it around the outside of the Dutchman, who runs very, very deep? Who Am I? The Portuguese driver is squeezed out onto the grass, tries to recover it, but Ghost slips through into 4th place, and Jordan tries to go through as well towards the outside of turn number 4. Tough to go through, but the high-tech is going to stay in it. No, he does just yield it on the inside. Who Am I? Carried a lot of speed going into the corner and may or may not have picked up a warning though for his troubles. And really, he did get a bit of a squeeze from Rick, but I also think he could have done more to keep his car on the track if I'm being a bit harsh on him. He drops down into 5th position and has work to do now to recover. Unlucky on that first lap, of course, and currently the man who went into this round placed 3rd in the championship, had a nightmare result in that sprint race, trying to make amends here in the feature race, but now on those soft tyres is frustrated behind the Van Amersfoort car in front of him. And of course, these two are going to be mighty close in the championship standings, mainly separated by a point or two at this stage, given the fact that Who Am I went in 11 points ahead of Ghost. So there's certainly a significant battle between these two, as a Fortuna 126.8 in race trim is drawing further and further clear and taking advantage of those soft tyres. Ghost covers to the inside. Who Am I attacks to the outside naturally as they go on the brakes. He tries to go the long way around. Ghost is going to run that car in deep. He's going to squeeze it right to the curb. He holds him off for the time being, but there's another attack coming, and again, this time he tries to find the inside of turn 2. Does Who Am I? They both lock up and run it in deep, but Ghost just doesn't quite have the grip to fend him off, and Jordan DHL now finds himself on the outside of the Van Amersfoort car towards turn 4, and Ghost is finding himself boxed in. He's going to try and send it around the outside, gets squeezed right out to the outside. He may have got contact, or may have got a warning, sorry. They're still going at it at a turn 5, and Ghost holding onto that inside line. Jordan trying to stick it out, but he's going to run out of space. Drops back, and in the end has to cede that 5th possession. What a scrap between those two. Heated stuff, it has to be said out there, as Ghost refused to yield in a seemingly hopeless position around the outside of turn number 4, and Jordan likewise trying to hang it round the outside of turn number 5, and I thought they may come to blows, but in the end just about managing to hang on to it. Ghost now on those mediums trying to stick with Who Am I. We'll see, of course, when the tyre crossover begins to happen. Certainly Fortuna hasn't gained as much on this 3rd lap on Verstappen. He's gained a few tenths, but of course that's a wild contrast to the first couple of laps when he was gaining seconds for free, it seemed. When those tyres were at their absolute best. Ghost now trying to fend off Jordan. He didn't quite have DRS down the main straight. Jordan going from long range, going into the apex of turn number 1. In the end, though, he can't quite corral that car back into line, and Ghost fends off yet another assault from the high-tech, the pole setter for this race. Is hunting for any which opportunity he can find, but now has pressure from Koru, who gets up alongside in the middle of turn number 2, but can't quite find the way through at that stage, so he slots down into 7th position and still tries to chase after the high-tech in front of him. So they run still virtually line astern behind the medium tyre shod Ghost. He's trying to work his way across to Who Am I, and I have to say that tyre crossover is already beginning to happen. Hugo and Reshka side by side, and there was contact, and Reshka was certainly held back by that. Robsu was trying to find a way through there at the inside of turn 8, found himself pinched and found his car sliding out from underneath him, had to gather it back up. Hugo gaining his way through. I did wonder though if there was damage on that Campos car, and it does seem as though there might be. You can see it there on that left hand end plate. So the Swede with plenty to do in this race. It really hasn't been a great story so far in this race for the defending champion in the F2 Cup. Towards lap 5 they go, and Ghost still trying to repel Jordan DHL. He's covering early now. He knows the threat as Jordan DHL gains on him towards turn 1. Goes towards that outside line. They both break deep. Who's going to get to the apex first? There is side-by-side contact. Jordan's pushed out wide. He does though have the DRS. Going towards turn number 2. Ghost though still in it. He's going to try and fend off. Jordan runs very deep on the brakes, and Ghost can't quite find the switchback. Jordan at last has found his way through and will try and chase after that podium Joe in front of him, with Who Am I chasing down Rick, but both of them will be vulnerable in the laps to come on those aging soft tyres. Verstappen just taking a couple of tenths back on Fortuna, but Fortuna for the moment holding on to that race lead, and of course he will benefit from that undercut. Rick getting a huge lighting up of the rear tyres then as he tries to make progress in that 3rd possession, but certainly the soft tyres are beginning to betray them. And that's going to lead to those yellow all tyre runners beginning to come back at them. A penalty for Hugo. That is not going to be good news for him as his torrid evening continues up to this point. So Tyre dynamics beginning to play into the race at the moment as Joe B picks up a penalty. He's had a miserable start to life in this race as well, currently down in 15th position as up in front. Rick, we saw him letting up those tyres. He's decided enough is enough. In comes Rick after just 5 laps of this race. He's trying to grab that undercut, but those soft tyres were betraying him very early on. He's going to have work to do on those mediums. He will try, of course, grab that undercut though. We shall see. Others will be vulnerable. Copemaster up behind Koru. So soft tyre runners beginning to fade and medium tyre runners beginning to thrive. They exit turn 1 now, P6 and P7. The Invicta car in the slipstream, but Koru just about hanging on to DRS for this lap at the very least. Keeps a hold of that 6th place, but can he continue to do that with Jordan and Ghost showing such furious pace in front of them, and both of them begin to chase down on Who Am I's 3rd position. So this race continues to evolve as we near a third of the way through. It is still Fortuna leading. QVR Verstappen very, very slightly coming back towards him, but I have to say that the championship leader has done an excellent job of maintaining that gap in spite of the tyres. We'll see if he does elect to come in on this lap, or if he's going to try and extend it longer and make that medium stint at the end as easy as possible. He will be aware of a potential threat that QVR Verstappen may pose to him in the closing laps, so he's going to try and get as much of a buffer as he can, and whether that will be through an undercut we shall see. He heads towards the pit entry, elects not to do it on this lap. I expect next lap may be a decent point to pull that trigger. Who Am I, the 2nd soft runner in this race, now has pressure from Jordan DHL as Koru comes in. Of course, he was under heavy pressure from Copemaster, who does seem to be lagging quite severely. I do hope that doesn't have much of an impact on the race. Koru and Jakalako as well as JB coming in. Jordan now getting up towards Who Am I. Can he find a way through as they exit turn number 1? You can see the High-Tech's rear tyres squirming, but he's doubtlessly got more grip than the AX car in front of him. So can he take advantage of that? Out of turn 2 they go. He tries to line him up. Can he get a bit of drive up towards turn 4? It doesn't look as though he's going to be able to. He's going to have to tuck in and maybe try and get creative in this middle sector. We shall see. You'd expect the man in front of him to pit, if not on this lap, then on the next lap. He and Fortuna, the only drivers who started on the soft tyres, who still continue to remain on those tyres. Jordan's so late on the brake. He's so confident, but at the moment he's unable to utilise that confidence and speed that he has. Still caught up behind, and if he will of course be ruining that mistake he made heading out of turn 3 on the opening lap. He's been frustrated as his 2 big rivals disappear and scamper up the road. Fortuna's lead is beginning to melt on this lap, and I do suspect he is going to go pit lane bound. When they come round to the pit entry at the end of this lap, we shall see. Yes, he does indeed come in. So now that undercut is going to come into effect. How much of a buffer can he build on QVR Verstappen? He's managed to make good use of those soft tyres in the first stint. He's very, very cautious for that pit entry. Who Am I, of course, follows him in. That frees up Jordan and Ghost to go in search of the best results they can. 4 seconds, though, the deficit to QVR Verstappen. Let's see what the undercut's going to be worth, of course, as Rick came in early, managed to get a good jump on Koru. Jakalako right behind Koru. Let's see where these guys, though, are going to be in emergence. Rick, of course, was in combat with Who Am I throughout that first stint, and he'll be certainly hoping, of course, he's had to deal with the tyre warm-up. That's one factor that plays into it that potentially makes the undercut less potent, and that means that they're going to come out almost. So that's Who Am I on the pit exit, trying to fend him off. He's going to have the cold tyre disadvantage for himself, and Rick is all over him. So here we go, up towards turn 2. Rick looking to the inside. He's not got much space to work with, but he's going to go for it anyway. They go side by side. They touch wheels just a little bit. They're going to go side by side again through turn 3, but at the moment, Who Am I fending him off? Rick tucks back into the slipstream, looking for turn 4, but there's nowhere to go, and Who Am I is just about managed to resist that 2-lap undercut, and now with the fresher tyres, get them up to temperature and try to put a gap on Rick. They have managed to stay in front of Koru, so it's certainly a good outcome for Who Am I, and he can go off in search. Of course, he's going to be worrying about the likes of Jordan and Ghost. Also in that second stint, another big snap from Rick. He's really been fighting that Prema all throughout tonight. He manages to keep it on the road, but that's going to dent his chances of trying to get through. Cora, big snap behind out of turn 11, manages to bring it back into lane, but he cedes the possession to Jackalacco. And of course, these two ran together for much of the sprint race. They find themselves also together on track here in this feature race. We near half distance with Verstappen leading the way. Jordan just chipping away a few tenths of that gap though on the last lap, and he's bringing Ghost with him. So these two could become increasingly competitive in the laps to come. Behind Fortuna, now getting those tyres up to temperature and going off in pursuit. He does have plenty of clean air in front of him as Koru looks to reclaim that possession on Jackalacco, and does so. Also get a bit of a snap for his troubles on the exit, but he does have the DRS to fend off going in towards turn number 2 and keeps a hold of that 13th place for the time being. And he does seem to have a little bit more latent pace, so he'll try and use that to good effect to chase down Rick. He does have a lap fresher tyres than the Prema. When are these guys going to pull the trigger? That is the question we're going to have to be asking, with Verstappen leading, Jordan leading Ghost at the moment. So we saw the soft runners extending for at most about 7 laps. So logic would dictate around about lap 11, lap 12 for these guys. If they want to try and make it even, we'll see if they come in a bit earlier to try and alleviate some of the undercut that the soft starters are going to have. Goes to the outside of Jordan, trying to get that one done. He tries to find that switchback. He does get better traction, and he does have DRS. Jordan aggressively covering that inside line, and he's going to squeeze it to the outside too. Goes without much space to work with. Can't quite get through. Jordan parks the car on the apex. He was certainly pushing the boundaries there, but he manages to fend off Ghost. Ghost certainly with enough pace to highly threaten the high-tech car, but he couldn't quite get through on that occasion. That's certainly a bit of a blow to both of their pace though, and they do cede some time to some of the drivers running around them at the moment. Jordan P2, Ghost P3, Copemaster comes next, trying to gap Runes. Hugo is next and is showing some great pace with wing damage, but ultimately that wing damage is just such a handicap. It's hard to see him getting much of a result out of this race. We do have a spinner, and it is Rick. Rick, after all the snaps, all the near misses, and it's finally caught up to the 4-time champion. He gets that car back into line, but drops well down the order. Of course, he's had a mixed season up to this point, some highs, some lows, and after a really good start to this race, unfortunately it seems to be trending towards the latter for Rick. He does get that car, of course, back into lane. No damage, but certainly damage to his chances at a good points paying possession, and of course he's lit up those tyres as well. Going to be hard work towards the end of this race. Towards lap 11 they go. Ghost again on Jordan, looking to the inside. They both go deep on the brakes. Jordan managing to fend off. The spanner's up for Ghost, so I think he is considering that pit stop. Maybe he thinks he can gain an advantage through that undercut. We shall see. Fortuna, fastest lap of the race. That shows the benefit of those fresh tyres, and I do expect he's going to have a very solid buffer on QVR Verstappen when he does elect to dive for that pit lane, which may be this lap, maybe the next. I don't expect it to fall outside of that window for the vast majority of these medium starters. I do expect certainly some of them to be peeling in at the end of this lap. It will be 8 laps on the softs, which will be a bit of a task, but you don't want to see too many laps of that undercut regardless. So I would expect the pit lane to at least have a couple of occupants when they do come towards that lane. At the end of lap 11 of 19 here in this feature race, Robson with a penalty. That's not going to do his chances much good. He's already the last runner out of the medium starters who haven't come into box. What does QVR Verstappen do at the end of this lap? He's beginning to leak time towards the chasing duo behind him, but he does stay out. So maybe they do think for the majority of them it's a long way to go on the softs. Ghost though, he wants track possession. He wants to gain the upper hand on Jordan, and he is in to the pit lane, getting that car stopped as Lawrence has come off at the rear of the field as Bacon Bear brings her evening to a close, sadly, in the pit lane. And Lawrence as well spinning. It's been a night to forget for some of these guys. In they come now. Ghost, where is he going to come out? Is he going to get clean air? Is he going to have work to do against some of these medium runners? We'll see. Of course, he was chasing down the likes of Who Am I in the early stages of that last stint It looks as though he's going to seed that. Through goes Who Am I? Is he going to be out in front of the likes of Koru? Let's see Koru coming at him, but Ghost is going to have that one covered. So he does get nice clean air, and he will try and hunt down the Portuguese driver for what could be a potential podium. He's going to have work to do to keep those soft tyres on the island at the end of this race, but I'm sure these next few laps are going to be glorious for the sprint race winner, and he's going to set off after the ALX car in front of him, looking at a podium in what would be a great night of racing for Ghost. Can he continue that ascendancy, as I think Lawrence is going to bring his evening to a close as well? He does indeed. So Lawrence peeling out of it, unfortunately for him. Ghost, though, 4 seconds is the deficit. Let's see if he'll get it done. I expect pit stops to come in response. QVR Verstappen does come in. Jordan stays out. So he may be thinking about that offset. He may know he's conceding the undercut to Ghost. So he may be looking to try and build that offset so he has that firepower to come at him at the end of the race. Certainly those 13 laps on the mediums to then 6 on the softs is quite an uneven split, and lap 12 certainly proving the favourite lap for most of these drivers, as every other medium starter elects to dive pit lane. So QVR Verstappen is going to get out. Can he come out in front of Who Am I? That's the question. It's on my lips at this stage. Fortuna is comfortably going to clear him, but it does look as though the AX car is charging down that straight, and there's going to be very little in and on pit exit, but Who Am I is going to get this one done, I think, and indeed he does. So QVR Verstappen, his charge thwarted. That will certainly come as music to the ears of Fortuna, who now has a net 7-second buffer over seemingly his nearest rival in the race, and Verstappen is going to, well, he is going to get that grace to warm up the tyres, but ultimately he's going to struggle to make best use of the best grip that he's going to have in this race. So he's going to try and set off after the third place man on the road. Jordan continuing to extend. He's going to be worried, I imagine, of Koru and Jackalacco for him on pit exit. It's going to be fairly close, so keep an eye on that. But QVR Verstappen, those tyres will be coming good, but at the moment he doesn't have the space to drive into. So this will be a frustrating endeavour. Ghost is gradually coming back towards Who Am I too, but not quite as quickly as I expected, I must concede. So maybe those medium tyres still quite robust, as Jordan DHL predictably does go to the pit lane and will hand the lead over to his teammate, and I have to say that's a lead he seems very unlikely to relinquish. So can QVR Verstappen get this move done? It will become second place at the beginning of the next lap. Can he get it done? For Who Am I trying to square off that exit, you see, keeping as much momentum as he can and immediately breaking that slipstream. He is certainly up for the fight, but QVR Verstappen has a monumental grip advantage, and he's coming fast at him towards the inside of turn number 1. He tries to fend off on the brakes, Who Am I, but in the end he's simply blocked past by the ART, who gets through in a second place, and there's very, very little that Who Am I can do about that, I'm afraid. He drops down into third position. Bit of a lock-up for QVR Verstappen, but he is very unlikely to relinquish that second place, and Who Am I has to see it, and he'll be worried about Ghost. Koru battling away with Jackalacco. Jordan was able to clear these guys, who still go at it. Koru just with a nose ahead towards turn 4. Jacko, surely in a hopeless position, is still going to try and fight it, and they get caught on each other. They both run off the road, and Hugo's going to take advantage, sweeping around the outside of turn 5 against Koru, and Copemaster tries to follow him through. Hugo, on another superb recovery drive, gets himself into 6th position on the road. And those two just coming to blows there, Koru and Jackalacco. They've been virtually inseparable on the track all night, and I have to say they were especially inseparable in turn 4 there. Jackalacco dropping back, and with older tyres on that car against these fresh soft runners, it's going to be a very tough ask for him to stay in the mix in these next couple of laps. The championship leader does lead the race, and he leads dominantly. He is 6.3 seconds clear. Verstappen has not taken very much out of him since he got that move done on Who Am I, and in fact with the tyre deltas, let's not be completely sure that's second place either. Ghost is also trying to work his way back in there, and Jordan tried to reel in Ghost. So those are the factors at play here in this top 5 battle. But Fortuna looks imperious. The championship leader, of course, had a superb damage limitation drive in the sprint race, and here in the feature race, he is proving that in this championship, he is simply the best, and he just has to bring this one home for a race victory with seemingly very little threat from behind. Verstappen, though, he is looking to be threatened here in this second place battle. Who Am I is sticking with him. Of course, Who Am I did have to concede some points in that sprint race. He's trying to make amends here in the feature race. He's chasing down Verstappen for that P2, and the soft tyres already seem to be losing that little bit of top end punch. Ghost is closing, but again, not as close and not as quickly as I might have expected. So Fortuna leads. Looks like he's heading for the race win. Codemaster losing out to Runes in that middle sector. Not sure how that's happened, but Runes does go through and looking for a good haul of points certainly from tonight. Of course, he would have been brewing those penalties in the sprint race, but he's on for a good result here. Trying to stay with it is off the road. Codemaster picks up yet another penalty, and that may put pay to any of his chances in this battle. It will certainly be news to the years of Jackalacco. Up to the front. It does look as though Who Am I said he may be sticking with QVR Verstappen. He just about managed to stay in DRS range. But that lap was a trickier one for the Portuguese driver. He's hanging on in there for the time being. But can he pull a move? Fortuna did concede some time on the last lap, but nowhere near enough to feel threatened. Codemaster, in spite of the fact that he was still running in the top 10, elects to bring his feature race to a close. So we're down to 14 runners in this race, and everyone who does finish will get points. But it is Fortuna leading. It is Who Am I chasing down QVR Verstappen for that second place. It is Jordan chasing down Ghost with a 2-lap tyre advantage. So still many battles to be had. Runes ahead of Koru, ahead of Jackalacco. So much to play for here with just under 4 laps to go. Fortuna heading for a clear race win, but many battles to be had behind. It does seem as though QVR Verstappen has certainly got his work cut out to keep a hold of this second place. Who Am I's had a better lap to stick with him on this occasion. It does seem as though they're going to fend off the charge of Ghost. That gap to Who Am I has begun to trend the wrong way for the former two-time champion himself in the F2 Cup. And he's got now much bigger problems to worry about with a charging Jordan DHL behind him. So Who Am I now? He's just on a PB lap, and he's certainly threatening, but he's just going to run out of space, or is he? He does feign that inside line. Jordan ever so threatening behind Ghost. He does give the Van Amersfoort car a bit of a tag in the middle of turn number 1. Towards turn 2 they go. He is going to stay behind for the time being, but he does have more grip, he does have more pace, he does have everything he needs to try and get through with just 3 laps to go here in this feature race. So 2 cracking battles shaping up for P2 and for P4, and really those soft tyres just aren't providing the overall punch that they needed. Seemingly having that grip advantage off the line and gaining track position was the strategic edge in this race, rather than avoiding the poor warm-up of the mediums in the second stint. It seems as though going actually starting on those softs has proven to be the superior strategy. Not by a great margin, certainly both strategies very, very viable, but I think we're seeing in these early laps just how strong those mediums are in the closing laps of the race. And Who Am I now trying to put them to good effect as he hunts down QVR Verstappen for this second place as Koru picks up, which could be a crucial penalty. He's going to have his work cut out trying to pull a gap on Jackalacco behind him. So here we go now with 2 laps to go here at the Hungaroring. Look at Jordan to Ghost. That's going to be a big scrap towards turn number 1. Who Am I also trying to chase down QVR Verstappen, but with ground to make up, goes towards the inside, but only a feint as Jordan is going to go through. Jordan to P4, tried to keep it in front on the brakes. He does go deep, but he is going to hang on in there. Ghost cannot find the traction to get it back, and he has to tuck it behind to that 5th place. Can he rally for the final lap? It's going to be very, very difficult. Who Am I was fainting behind QVR Verstappen, but if he wants that second place, he's going to have to stay nearer. He's going to have to apply more and more pressure and try and get a good enough run towards turns number 1 and 2 on that final lap. Still a second place battle, which hangs in the balance here between these 2 great rivals already in this F2 Cup. And this looks like a battle set to go all the way to the line. So Fortuna well and truly clear in this race, but certainly QVR Verstappen is not out of the clear for this second place. We do have yellows, and Rick is off once again at the back of the field. What a nightmare race for the Dutchman. Who Am I does run out of track limits. He has got away with that one. Maybe he did have warnings to spare. Does he have them now? That's the question. Will that be playing on his mind as he hits the final lap, as he tries his level best to overhaul QVR Verstappen for that second place? Here we go! We hit the final lap here at Hungary with the win sealed, but a furious battle on here for second place between two championship rivals, and QVR Verstappen is on the defensive here. Who Am I is charging towards turn number 1, and he's found that inside line. Can he get that one done? Verstappen sweeps to the outside. He's desperately looking for that switchback, and he's got a good one, but he doesn't have the DRS. He tucks into the slipstream, but Who Am I is going to see him off surely as they head towards turn number 2. He's had to work ever so hard for that second place, but now he has it in hand, and he looks to try and fend off QVR Verstappen here on this final lap. Jordan has managed to see off Ghost too. He's going to run out of time, it seems, to chase down QVR Verstappen, but certainly a very credible recovery drive after that half spin he had on the opening lap. He is 4th place on the road. He certainly showed pace that was good for better results than he's mustered up tonight, but it's still certainly a very, very strong drive. Although after putting it on pole, he will be bemoaning what could have been. This man won't be. Well, maybe he was in the sprint race. He may be thinking if he didn't get the damage, then he could have won that race. But without damage in this race, he's been virtually unchallenged. He stormed away at the start, and in the end, he has looked utterly untouchable. He already has 2 wins on the season, and he looks set for a third here as he punches out of the final corner. Fortuna, that man, is on top again in the F2 Cup. He wins the feature race here in Hungaroring. Who Am I? What a brilliant defensive and offensive drive to take P2 ahead of QVR Verstappen. Jordan comes next ahead of Ghost. Runes, what a drive from him. Was Hugo playing a rear gunner role in those last few laps. Nevertheless, Runes comes through in P6, and what a drive it was for him. Jackalacko taking advantage of no penalties gets P7. Hugo comes next, then Koru, then James, Reshka, Robsu, and then the 2 Premas. With a nightmare race in this iconic F2 Cup combination, not having the best of times here tonight. JB does go above Robsu. Does Rick follow suit? I do believe he does. And that will bring this Hungaroring round to an end. What a great night of racing we've been treated to once again in the F2 Cup. We'll, of course, tidy up the results as well. As they begin to debrief in the chat as well. Certainly some great drives out there. We'll tidy up the results. So, from the feature race, who else but Fortuna takes the win ahead of Who Am I and QVR Verstappen. Jordan is next up ahead of Ghost. Runes, magnificent drive in the feature race. Actually, a very well worked race from Campos in the end, in spite of some of the bad fortunes that they had throughout the night. Jackalacko is 7th, then Hugo, then Koru, then James, Reshka in P11, just trailing James over the line. Then Rick, of course, several spins in that race, curtailing his efforts. JB is next, just a 10th of a second behind his teammate in the classifications, and then Robsu in 14th position, the last classified finisher as Copemaster. Lawrence and Bacon Bear not making it to the checkered flag. So that will be it for tonight. I will, of course, anoint a driver of the day, and well, it's I think I can safely say, although an honourable mention especially to Hugo for making use of some pretty dire situations throughout tonight, but I think it does come down to a 2-horse race between Ghost and Fortuna. And in the end, I think I do find myself, although Ghost's drive in the feature, or the sprint race rather, was magnificent, it's hard to argue with a man who came through P2 and P1 and well, also just had incredible pace throughout, managed wing damage, and still managed to charge his way through the field in the sprint race, and then of course an imperious drive in the feature race. Very difficult to argue with that one, but yeah, I think with just about all that said and done, we're gonna put round 5 in the books for tonight, and well, the next round is a controversial one at Reverse Silverstone, and one which I think is going to have mixed emotions among the drivers, probably especially so in the F1 series, given how impossible tyre management is at that track, but it's certainly not an easy task in these cars either. So we'll keep an eye out for that. But I think that is going to be just about it for the 5th round of the F2 Cup. From myself, Daka, it is goodbye for now, and until next time, we'll see you later.